Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. Um, Adik, let me know once you can see my screen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, visible.
Cool. Um, so yeah, so today's agenda I already discussed with you guys. So let's start with what's Linux and why is Linux important. So Linux is an operating system. You might already know that, but why is it important? So there's this thing called POSIX. What POSIX stands for is Portable Operating System Interface. So this is a set of rules, sort of. It's a set of standards that was developed way before. So what these standards define is a way that to make an operating system. So why this was developed was so that we can have different programs written in different operating systems, and these programs can run on each other. So if Linux and Mac both follow these standards, so essentially any program that's written on Linux would run on Mac and so on and so forth. So that's why it's essential to for developers to work in these environments. Most of the developers use either Linux or Mac. So there's a compatibility difference between Windows and Mac and Linux at the same time. So programs written for Windows won't run on Linux and Mac, but Linux and Mac programs can run on each other. So this is what POSIX is. So what POSIX defines is so you might have used commands like ls, cd, so on and so forth. So these commands have been defined in POSIX already. That's why ls is available in any distro that you use. At the same time, it's available in Mac OS and all. So that's essentially these distros and operating system following whatever the POSIX defined for them. So I'll start with what Linux has in its structure. So when I say Linux, it refers to the kernel. So you might have heard terms like Ubuntu, Fedora. So these essentially package the whole operating system that we have. So an operating system, so these distributions include several other things than just Linux itself. So what Linux is the kernel. So what that means is that it is essentially that layer that sits between hardware and any other computer program that's running. So it is responsible for having um, for maintaining memory, allocating memory to different programs, providing all the drivers that we have, then providing the file system. The whole file system is provided by the Linux kernel. So on this Linux kernel sit two things. First is the Windows management software. So essentially the Windows, I mean, when I say Windows, I don't mean the operating system Windows, the Windows sort of style that we have. So essentially this is a window. This terminal that you can see is a window. So that all is provided by a Windows management software. And there's something known as GNU. So what GNU does is it provides these utilities that we have. It provides an implementation for ls, cd, and so on and so forth. So this and the last part that sits on the top of these two guys as well are the application softwares. Like for example, in Linux you have the File Explorer, you have Calculator, you have LibreOffice. So that sort of forms the application software part. So essentially, these four things, when clubbed together, make a distribution. So Ubuntu, Fedora, all these distributions are part um, of package come with the Linux kernel, some Windows management system, GNU, and application software that we have. So yeah. So next up, what I'll explain is, so you might have used these commands, right? So what essentially there are two categories of sort of you can categorize software on the way you use it. So there is CLI and there is GUI. So any software that you use can either have a graphical interface. So when I say graphical interface, it means that it has buttons, it has tabs, it has text and all. So your job is mostly to point using a mouse and click at things to get stuff done. Now, what command lines provides you is a text interface. So essentially, the only thing that you have is your keyboard. So you can just enter text to get things done. So what POSIX defines is that we have certain commands. So each command does a specific small operation, and what using the text at a interface that is provided to you, you can use these commands. So what's a good feature of these commands is that they are like Lego bricks. So what you can do is you can join 2-3 Lego bricks. So in a sense, you can join 2-3 commands to get a job done that's much more than what these commands provide by default. So essentially, you sort of club together lots of commands to get um, these things, your job done. So do I mean when I say commands? So essentially, these commands are just programs. So you might have written programs in various languages, like C, C++, whatever. So these commands are also programs. They might be written, most of them are written in C, but some of them are written in assembly, C++, so on and so forth. So what you are whenever you're typing anything in your command line, um, so what you do is this is basically a sort of programming language. So if you've heard about the shell script or bash, it is a kind of programming language. It's same as the regular programming languages that you're familiar with. So it has conditional, it has variables. At the same time, it supports these commands that have. So you can use them as functions, sort of. So what I'll do is I'll introduce you to how this whole thing works. I'll show you one command that we have. So there's this command called hello. Sorry, there's this command called echo. So what echo does is it just prints things out. So if I say echo hello, it will print out hello. What I'll do is, so I'll do this echo $path. So $path is a variable that's already present in bash or shell. So if I enter this, so I get this long list of all the paths that I have. So what essentially this list contains is a list. This is a list of paths. If you notice, there are lots of colons in between. So this is basically a delimiter. So essentially, this is the one path. This is the next path, so on and so forth. So whenever I type any command, let's say I type ls, and as soon as I press enter, what's going to happen is um, it's gonna look out for this program called ls through all these paths that we have, and as soon as it finds the program called ls, it will just execute it. So that's essentially how things are laid out. So you have all these program commands that you use are essentially programs which sit somewhere in these paths. By the way, these paths, the $path variable is you can modify it. Every shell has its own way to modify. Basically, you have a file in which this whole string is defined, so you can change it and include some more folders where if you have something, some executables lying around there. So that's what commands. That's the basic of path and all. By the way, guys, if you have any doubt in between, you can directly straight away ask, unmute yourself and ask, or just ping me in the chat box. We'll answer that. Also, we'll have a Q&A session later as well. Okay, so next thing is so there are lots of commands. How do you get help for these commands? So there are 3 ways to get help for anything. First thing is, let's say there's this command called cat. I want to know what this thing does. So first thing is do -- help. So just add this argument called help in front of the command. So what it would give you a brief of what the all the arguments that it supports, what the command essentially does. So that's the first way of getting the help. Second way is there's a command which provides you all the manuals. So it's like manuals for every command that you have. So man would, let's say if I do man cat, so it would provide me a longer sort of text for the commands that are available. So for man cat, I'll get a very long sort of text explaining what all cat does, all the arguments that we have, a few examples, who has written it, so on and so forth. So these are the two standard ways to get help in Linux. There's a third way. So these two ways work by default any distros. So in any this would work in Mac as well. So there's this third thing that I'm going to explain. There's this command called TLDR. So now this won't come by default on most of the system. You need to install this program. So um, for Ubuntu, I think it's sudo apt install TLDR. For I'm on a Fedora system right now. So for Fedora, it is sudo dnf install TLDR. So TLDR is it sort of gives you cheat sheets kind of. So let's say if I do TLDR cat, so it would give me a very short, concise way of how things work out for that specific command. So this is what essentially most of the time I end up using TLDR rather than using help and all, because I just need the topmost, like the common operation that the command provides. So yeah, so that's how you would get help for um, any commands that we have. So what I'll explain is the file structure that Linux provides. So Linux has these sort of system of folders and files. This is same for Windows as well. So the kernel provides you a sort of an abstraction to access the resources. Any resource can be accessed through the file system that we have. So files and folders are basically a sort of hierarchy. It's a tree kind of structure. So the base, so the root kind of the tree is the slash. Slash is essentially the root folder of the whole system that you have here. So there are lots of folders. I'll explain some of these folders, what each folder does. And inside each folder, you get resources and all, so on and so forth. So like the first thing you have is the bin. So what bin directory has is essentially the important binaries that you have. So bash, some of the commands that you'll run are already in bin. Then we have boot. Boot contains files related to the bootloader. So whenever you start your computer in Linux, so the process starts through the boot, the files present in boot command. Dev is something known as device files. This is beyond the scope of this workshop. You can Google if you want to what exactly dev is. Etc has all the configurations that are there. So all the passwords, all the Wi-Fi, whatever, anything that has some configuration involved, you can find it in the etc folder. So home has all the users present. So if I do ls/home, so there are 3 users on the system. Sorry, there are just 2 users. There's CodeCampy and Linux, Linux Brew. So essentially you create users, right? So all the folders and the files related to one user will be present in this the specific user directory that we have, right? So yeah, that's home. Lib contains a lot of libraries that may be used by programs. Same is the case with lib64. So next up is media. So essentially what Linux does is any hardware that is there. So it can be your hard disk, it can be the Wi-Fi interface, it can be the Ethernet ports, it can be the power settings, power for laptops, the battery for a PC, the AC supply. At the same time, any pen drives and anything that any hardware is abstracted sort of into a file. So essentially, anytime you enter a flash drive or something, it would show up as a file or a directory in the media directory. So that's how Linux abstracts things out. It provides you files as an abstraction for any resource, hardware resource that you have. So essentially, your hard disk would essentially be essentially be shown as a directory or a file. So that's how Linux sort of gives you access to various resources. So yeah, that's media would be anything that's removable. So flash drives, any external hard disk that you put in, that sort of stuff. MNT would be the hard disk that's present inside your system. So all the file systems that can be that are mounted. So opt is essentially, so when you want to install some software by your own, it's always a good idea to install it in the opt folder. So let's see what's there in my opt. So yeah, so things like Google, so Google is, I think it's Google Chrome, Firefox, Sublime Text. So the things that you installed yourself, it's a good idea to install it in the opt folder. It's essentially for that. Next up, SBIN is essentially similar to bin. It contains more binaries. USR folder contains applications and utilities that are very specific to the user of this PC. Anything else, any other folders that you see may not be present, but the ones which I explained you so far are by default present on any Linux distro that we have. So that's how essentially the file system works for Linux. Next up, what I'll explain is how all the different commands work. So far, does anyone has any doubts or something in what all I've explained so far? Okay, cool. So I'll move on to command structure. So what we have is, so I'll explain the general structure of each command. So anything that will put would be a text, word, or something. So there would be the name of the command, and following that you would add something known as arguments. So this is essentially like the command being a function, and you're passing in arguments to that function in your programming language. So any command you can. So there's this analogy that I use. So every command is like a person who's sitting in a room, and that room has two paths, two doors essentially to get information inside, and two doors to get information outside. So one way to get information inside is through arguments. So whatever you write over here, the text that you write following that command would be considered as an argument, and that would be one way to get inside and give information to that command. So this information would be required for to tell the command what exact operation that the command needs to perform. Other way that we have is using, there are this thing known as input streams and output streams. So the other way is using something known as the standard input, stdin. So let's say there's this command called cat. What this does is it so information doesn't flow in cat. So through the arguments, I mean it can flow, but I'll explain you. I'm explaining you a different mode. So right now it's waiting for me. The command is waiting for me to throw in some information to the stdin. So it's like, you just assume that it's like a door through which information would come to the cat command. So now by default stdin is connected to my keyboard. So if I type Linux, and I press enter, what would happen is, so this string Linux would be passed in through the stdin door. So cat would receive it, and what cat does is its job is to receive whatever is coming through the input streams and throw it out of the output stream. In this case, the std out stream. So by default, the standard input is connected to the my keyboard. So whatever I typed was entered in as an input, and the std out stream that is there is connected to my terminal window. So that's why you can see the same thing that I typed in coming through on your screen. So that's the first thing. So what all I explained is there's the two ways to get information is through arguments and the stdin. stdin is by default connected to the keyboard. Third thing is std out, which is connected to your screen. Fourth thing, there's one more way to get things out, is it's known as std error. So by default, this is also connected to your screen. And if the command has some error, it can throw that information of the whatever error that is there through the std err door that it has. So I said by default because you can change the way these things work. So essentially, that's how these commands behave as Lego bricks. You can sort of connect them to each other. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I do ls. What ls does is it lists out all the folders and files that I have in my current directory. So by default, it doesn't accept anything. I've not given any arguments to it. It just throws out the information through the std out stream. So let's say I don't want it to be shown on the screen, but I want to capture this information and store it in a file. What I can do is I'll use this operator, and let's say I want that file to be list.txt. So nothing is shown right now on the screen because what I did was essentially the information that ls was passing through the std out stream, I redirected it to a file called list.txt. So if I do ls again, you can observe that list.txt has been created. And if I show you guys what's there in that file, you can see all the things that were initially printed out on the screen are actually present in the file that we have. So essentially, that's what you can do. You can redirect these streams to either from one command to another command, or at the same time, what you can do is you can store stuff in files and so on and so forth. So yeah, so one way to do this is just redirecting it to a file. This greater than operator does is it redirects the standard output to the file. If you want to redirect the standard error, I'll explain this how. So let's say there's this command called get, you might be familiar with it. So I do get clone and I pass some random string. So this results in failure. This thing was there, this is an error that we have. So suppose I want to store this error. So what I'll do is I'll use 2 greater than, and let's say I store it in error.txt. So if you're seeing this red line here, this essentially means that the previous command failed. Green means it didn't fail. So in this case, cat list.txt didn't fail, so it's giving me green. Red means it failed, and whatever the error was, it was shown. It was passed through the standard error that we have. So if I ls again, I have the error.txt, and if I display the contents of the file, you have the same error that was passed on by the git command. So yeah, that's essentially how these are 2 ways of redirecting things. One more thing I can do is there's this thing called pipe command. So let's say there is a command whose output I want to pass through some other command. So what I can do is I can pass it through the pipe command. So let's say I have command 1, passing something to command 2. I want to pass this output to command 2. So what I can do is I can pipe this to command 2. So what would happen is the things that are coming out of command 1 through the standard output would be passed into command 2 through its standard input. So that's essentially how you sort of get to combine these two commands together. But I mentioned that there are two ways of getting input. So one way to pass, so if some command is accepting input through stdin, you can use the pipe command, pipe operator. If someone is passing information through standard through the arguments, what you may need to use is exargs. So let's say the information that's coming out to the standard output of command one, you need to pass it through as an argument to some other command. So doing this won't help, because what essentially this would do is it would pass on the information to the standard input. So what you may need to do is you may need to use something known as exargs. What exargs is essentially another command that we have. So what exargs does is whatever the command that is passed to exargs as an argument, it passes the information that exargs receives through its standard input as an argument to the second command that we have. So essentially, these are the two ways that you can sort of mix and match commands to make them work together. So this is how when I said the Lego analogy, that's how it works. So that's essentially that's it for the command structure that we have. Does anyone have any doubts or is unclear about what I explained? Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I'll go through a few commands that are there. A few of them are essential and a few of them I find really cool. I'll explain a few actual commands that we have. So yeah, let's start. So first thing is, first command is
Sahil, there's a doubt in the chat box.
okay, cool.
Saksham asks that how do you exit the cat command?
Okay, sure. So I'll run it. So what now what's happening is whatever cat is waiting for my input to run, right? So for any command for you to exit any command, there are two ways. What I'm doing is I'm pressing Control C. That is terminating that the program that's running. That's why you are getting this red thing. So as soon as I press Control C, it terminates that program. The other way is pressing Control D. What Control D is, it's Control D gives end of line character to your to the program. So cat knows that whenever I receive end of line, I'll just terminate. I'll just stop working. So that's how always remember that if some program is not running and you want to just terminate it, use Control C. And if you want to, if that command supports Control D, you can use Control D. I hope that clears the doubt. Are there any other doubts? Cool.
No.
Yeah, cool. So next what I'll do is I'll go through some essential and some cool commands that we have. So I'll just mention these commands. I'll not sort of go through one of them one by one. I'll just mention what they are used for. And so first up is sudo. So what sudo is used for is sudo stands for super user 2. So sometimes you need admin privileges to access to do some functionality, right? So sudo is essentially used to do that. Let's say I want to create, to explain you the file structure that we have. So let's say I want to create a folder called temporary.txt. If I try to create this, it would give me permission denied. That's because I am not, as a normal user, I'm not allowed to use this. I'm not allowed to make changes to any folder that's outside of my scope. So for this to happen, I would have to use sudo. That would ask me for a password. If I provide that, and let's start, I could create that temporary.txt file. So essentially what sudo is used for is using a single command as another user. By default, it's the admin user that's there. So that's sudo. I already explained you echo. Echo is used to print things. Whatever you provide it, echo would print it out. ls is used to list things out. So I showed you this. I'll show you a few arguments that ls supports. The first thing is ls-a. So if you're from the Windows world, you might have in Windows we have hidden files and folders. So you just mark some certain folders or files hidden, and they won't be shown in the Windows Explorer. In in Linux and in Mac, basically this is the POSIX standard that if you want to make something hidden, just start its name by dot. So this directory I am in, there's this folder called .git. So this was not shown when I did just ls because this is a hidden folder. So I just this there's a Git repository running in this directory that we have. So Git has created this folder for me, and it doesn't want the normal user to see it. That's why it has just added the dot in before the name. So ls-a would just list out all the files and folders that are hidden by default. Next up is -l. So what -l is, it sort of gives you some more data about each file and folder that's there. So yeah, I'll explain the important parts. So what the string that's there here is explains the permissions that are there for every directory and folder. So consider this file. There's a file called makefile in this directory. So what the first three characters symbolize are: we can read this file, we can write this file, we cannot execute this file. So when I say we, I mean this current user, me, the current user that has logged into it. Now in Linux, users are grouped together in several groups. So what this means is that the current user that's logged in can just read and write. Now, all the users that are part of the group that I am part of can just read this. They cannot write to this. And everyone else who's part of the system can just read this. So essentially the starting part gives you sort of an idea of what are the permissions for that file. If you notice here, for the directories, it has D stands for directories. Basically, the first modifier essentially gives you more information about what that entity is essentially. So yeah, what these numbers specify, this whole column, this specifies this information, but in short. So execute. So what every permission has been given a certain number. So read is 4. Write is 2 and execute is 1. So essentially what this does is this is sort of the permissions that are there. So you can read plus write. So just the addition of the permissions that you have. I'll explain how these permissions work in a later command. So that's essentially what's there. These are the two main arguments that are required for ls. Okay, so there's this command called chmod. So I explained what permissions are, right? So I'll make a file. Let's call it file.txt. I just created a file. So by default, I'm not able to execute this. So what chmod does is, chmod is used to sort of change the permissions of the files that are there. So I need to provide 3 numbers to it. The first number is tells me information about the permissions that would be there for the current user. The second number would be for the group, and the third number would be for anyone else. So let's say I want to make this file read, write, and executable as well at the same time. So read is, so as I mentioned before, read is 4, write is 2, and execute is 1. So what I'll do is I'll just say I'll put 7 here. So I want these, so 4 plus 2 plus 1. So I'll put 7 here, and I want everyone else to just have permissions that they cannot execute, but they can read and write. And I'll say file.txt. So if I do it ls again, you can see that everyone else can just read and write to the file, and I can read, write, and execute this file as well. Now executing this file won't make any sense because there's no program to run. But if instead this was actual a compiled program or a binary, making this executable would make sense to before executing it. So that's chmod. Then I'll go over some basic commands that you might have already used. I'll just brief over them. So first is pwd. Pwd gives you the present working directory, what directory you are in. Then there is cd. Cd is used to change directories. Next up, we have mkdir. Mkdir is used to make a new directory, let's say 10. So it created 10 for me. rmdir would delete that directory. Next, to create a file, what I'll do is I'll write touch new.txt. That would make a file for me. That would make a blank file for me. Deleting would be rm. So these are like just the basic commands that we have. One more is mv. Move is mv is used for moving things around. So I have file.txt. Let me move it. There's a folder called bin. I'll move it in there. So if I list out the contents of bin, my file.txt has been moved in that directory. So move is just moves it, while cp, what it does is it copy pastes files. So if you notice, file.txt has been removed because it has been moved to a different location. I do cp error.txt to my bin file, a bin directory. So yeah, it moved it there at the same, it copied it there at the same time. Error.txt is present to my current directory as well. So these are some, these are just the essential commands that are there. Like you might already be familiar with these. I'll go over 3 more commands, then I'll hand it over to Hardik. So first two are grep and find. So what these are used these are used to perform searches throughout your files and folders. What grep does is, grep is used to find for a certain string in all the in the files that you have. So let's say I want to find the string hash include, and I'll find it here. Okay. So what I did was, so grep takes in a search pattern. So I wanted to search for the word hash include, and it takes in the files that you want. Now I wanted it to search in all the files that are there in my current directory. So I gave the -r argument, which just says that search recursively. So yeah, if So it's not necessary to learn all these. You can just TLDR these. So let's say I forget what grep does. What TLDR would give me is a sort of cheat sheet kind of. So essentially, this is what I did. I did grep. I put the search pattern, and I gave the path. And since this was, I wanted it to search recursively, I gave it the R argument. So that's grep. So grep finds things in inside files. So now if I want to find things, find files in my current directory, there's this command called find. So first thing it takes is it takes the from where you want to start the search for the files that you want, and then I'm specifying I want anything that is .cpp that ends with cpp. What find is doing is it's searching for all the files that end with .cpp. So I'll do TLDR of find. So it would show me sort of a cheat sheet of what all you can do. So you can have you can search using name, you can search using, you can have, so it supports a large number of arguments to do a large number of operations. So that's find and grep for you. Last command that I'll explain is SSH. So what SSH is, it allows you to connect to another system that's online. So for example, besides me, I have my another laptop that's running. So it's running Ubuntu and it has SSH server enabled. So what this thing is the IP address of that the other system that's running. Now it's running on the same network as my home network. So that's why I'm using I can just use this IP address, and this is the user that's Godcrump is the user that I want to log in to. So what this would do is it would try to connect to that the other computer. Okay, what I realized was that the other PC is not connected to the same Wi-Fi as this one is. So it's connected to some other network. So that's why it could not detect it on the local network that I have. So what I'm doing is I'm switching it back to the current network that I'm on. I'll just check the IP address that the other laptop has. Okay, cool. So yeah, now it's asking me for the password because it has already detected that some other system is available on the IP address that I have given. I'll just give it the password. So yeah, so you can see, so this terminal that you see is of the other system that's running. This is not my hardware. This is not this current system. So if I'll ls and all, these are stuff that belong to the other system that's running. So using this, you essentially can access other computers remotely. So that's what SSH does. I again pressed Control D. That's the end of file character, and SSH stopped working, and it gave me back my own terminal. So yeah, essentially these are the some important like essential commands and some interesting commands that I have for you. So yeah, so next I'll give it back to Hardik. Hardik, are you there?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll share my screen.
Yeah. In that time, I'll just explain you what, like, I'll give you some. I had mentioned about some surprise that we have for you guys. So it's gonna be some challenge. We'll give the details about what the challenge is after the session is done. But I'll explain you the perks that we have. So the challenge is for the second yearites of SPNIT and IIIT only. Anyone can attempt the challenge, but the perks are limited only for these guys. So we have our own GitHub page. So the whole ACM SVNIT has its own GitHub organization. So the winners of the challenge will get included in that in the organization. So essentially, what that allows you is that it allows you access to some repositories. At the same time, you get sort of a badge on your GitHub profile. Hardik, if you can show your GitHub profile.
Yeah. So I currently have it. Yeah. So something like this badge will come on your profile.
So yeah, that's the perks that we have for the challenge, which will the details of which we'll reveal soon. So yeah, over to you, Hardik.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, guys. So I have like screen key enabled, so you can see what keystrokes I'm making, and that will be essential for Vim. Okay. So I'm going to teach you about Vim and what is Vim. Well, Vim is a command line based text editor. And why do we need Vim? Because the first reason is like obvious. It does not use your memory and system resources and all. Okay, it's very lightweight, and the second main reason is that it's super fast. So it's like 10x faster than your other IDs and stuff, and you can do almost anything that you do with other IDs that you can do here also by configuring Vim. And so basically I've spent hours in configuring Vim, but I have also saved many hours by after configuring Vim by using it effectively. So being good at your text editor is a very important thing, and most people don't pay more attention to it. So we decided to like keep Vim as one of the topic here. So in order to, so now Vim is actually pre-installed in most of the Unix-based systems. So I'm currently running on Ubuntu, and it's pre-installed in Ubuntu, and all the basically Linux and Mac also. If you are using WSL, I'm not sure about it, but you can always install Vim using sudo apt install Vim, and that will install it. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna open a Java file over here. Okay. So in order to open any file, you just press Vim and then the name of the file. So now I'll show you the how you navigate through the files. So if you press J, you will move down the file. If you press K, you will move up. You can see my keystrokes over here. If you press H, you will move right, and if you press L, you will move left. So so why do we use HJKL? Basically because HJKL is in the home row. Okay, if you know home row, where your hands rest on the keyboard. So HJKL are on the home row, and you can navigate easily using J and K. So I can just press J, I can just press down K for multiple for some time and reach wherever I want to. So okay, actually I have made a list which I want to cover. I'm not sure if I'll be able to cover everything, but we'll see. So so now if you want to quit the file, and actually there are many memes on how to quit Vim, because it's like if you have seen the memes of on Vim on like people are very confused about how to quit Vim. Okay. So in order to quit Vim, you press colon, and you can see my cursor is now over here. So this is essentially a command mode, and now I can type any command. So I can just say quit, and that will quit out of Vim. There is a shortcut for this. We can just write Q, and that will quit from the Vim. So I'm back to my terminal. But if I do any changes, let's say I go over here and I write something. I'll show you how to do that. But if I write something and now I try to quit, you can say that you can see that here there is an error message that no write since last change. That means I have not written my file. In other words, I have not saved my file. So in order to save my file, I have to write it. Okay, so in order to write my file, I need to say colon W. So if I write colon W and then I press colon Q, now it will quit out of Vim. You can also combine these things, and you will see this in almost everything you use in Vim. You can combine commands and you can use it like any programming language you are using. So you can combine almost anything in whatever way you want. So you can say colon WQ, and that will save the file and quit out of Vim. That's another shortcut. So combining colon W and colon Q command. Okay, now you don't remember all the commands, but so you can always check for help. So you can say help. Let's say I want help on some command. I don't know what colon W does. So I can just say help colon W, and that will show, that will open the main page of this colon W. You can just write colon H and colon W. That will also work. Okay. So next I'm gonna show. So is there any doubt? Any doubts up till now? Cool. Yeah. So if you want to delete some character, you can press X, and that will delete one character. So sort of you can press X to delete some things like that. And currently you are in normal mode. Okay, so when you enter Vim, you are initially in normal mode, and Vim is a modal editor. Modal editor. Yeah. So there are different types of modes like normal mode, like insert mode. So currently I am in insert mode. I'll show you this soon. So currently you are in normal mode, and you can press X to delete characters. Okay, and I'm pressing U, and U basically does undo what I have done. So you will see me doing this again and again. So whatever change I'm making, I'll undo it so that it won't damage my file. So next thing I'm gonna show is how to write something over here. So in order to write something, you are currently in normal mode, and then you press I. Now you can see over here, now this is changed to insert. One more thing you won't see, if you will open your Vim, you won't see many of these things, like maybe you will not see even syntax highlighting, you will not see this relative numbering that I have enabled. Basically, you can see that relative to this line, the distances of all lines are over here. You will not see these things because I have configured my Vim, and I'll show you how I have done that at last. So this whole bar will also be not there. This is another plugin which I have used, but you will be able to see this. So you are currently in insert mode, and now you can write anything you want. Okay, so so you can see that I was at T, and I wrote I went to insert mode, and I write anything. Okay, and this is written before this character. Okay, so I'll press U to undo. Okay, and then now let's say I want to write something after this character, then I can press A. A stands for append, and this will put again me in insert mode, but at a character after this character. So after P it puts me, and now I can write anything. Now there are some handy commands, like if I'm over here and I want to write something in the beginning of the file, then I can just press capital I. So I'll press Shift I. That will take me to the first character, and now I can write anything. Similar to this, so what Shift I does is it will write what I want to write in the beginning. So it will take my cursor to the beginning. Okay. Similar to this, so I showed you I and A commands. Okay, and then I showed you this Shift I command. Similar to this, there is a Shift A command, I mean capital A command. So Shift A will take you to the end of the file. So now you can see I'm at the, sorry, end of the line, not file. So I'm on the end of the line, and now I can write anything I want. Okay, so this is for writing text in Vim. So okay. I've shown you undo, like undo, you undoes the last change I have made. For example, I have written something over here, and then I go to normal mode. So I press escape. Yeah, so if I'm in insert mode, I write something, and then to go back to normal mode, I press escape, and now I can operate the commands which I want. So I will press U, and that will undo the last change I have done. U again to undo the last change I have done. Now you can also redo it. So in order to redo, you press Control R. So Control R will redo it. Okay. So that's for undo and redo. Any doubts up till now? So the key bindings are by default, but you can also do your custom key bindings. I'll show my vimRC. I'll not explain it how to do, but I'll just show you. So because this time is like this workshop timing are too less for explaining everything. So I'll show you what I've done. Okay, these are by default. I'll not use any of my custom key bindings over here. I'll show you what are the key bindings of Vim. Okay, so any of these things you can use without doing anything. So that's it. Anything else? Yeah, so where was I? Yeah, so I explained you undo and redo commands. So now, as I told you, we can use H to move to the left and L to move to the right. Okay, now this is quite inefficient, right? I can also move through words. So anybody can guess, like the command for moving through words is W. So W will move you to the next word. So if you press W again, you will move to the next word. And you can see over here, it moves. It takes me to this to this opening square bracket, right? Opening bracket. It does not take me to this space, right? If I consider this whole word, then it does not take me to this character. So W essentially does not ignore the punctuations. If you see over here, it also stops on equals. It also stops on semicolon. Now, if you want to go to the next word using only space, then you can use capital W. So what capital W will do is, it will move you to this next word directly. Like, it will not stop on these punctuations. So the difference between small w and capital W is, small w will stop on these punctuations, and capital W will not stop. It will just stop on spaces and new line. So if I press capital W, so this is a way to move a little bit faster. We can also move backwards. Now to move backwards, again we have a command B. So B will move you backward. Okay. So W forward, B backward. Now I can press again, similar to capital W, we have capital B. Capital B will ignore the punctuations and move to the last word. Okay. So it will not stop over here. Yeah, so we can also move to the end of the word using E. So E will take us to the last word, last character of the word. Cool. Okay. Now I showed you this X command. X will delete a character, but that's also not efficient, right? If you want to delete a whole line, you will not like press X for 100 times. So that's not a good idea. So you have a delete command also. So what delete will do is, delete will delete. Yeah, basically. So you can delete a word. So DW, that will delete a word. and it's more like how you pronounce it. So if I want to say, if I say I want to delete 2 words, then I say D2W, so that will delete 2 words. And it depends on how you pronounce. For example, if I pronounce it to delete words, then I will say to delete word, and that will also work in the same way. So in the first sight, you might think that this is too difficult, but actually it's quite intuitive. So this is delete command, and you can also delete whole line by pressing D twice. So DB will delete whole line, and undo to U to undo. So there is another tweak with D. So you can press capital D, and that will delete everything after this character. Okay, so capital D will delete everything after this character. These are the 2 commands, and yeah. So let's say I'm over here and I want to move to the starting of this line. Now I can press 0 and I'll move to the starting of this line. But I want to move to the first character, right? I don't want to move over here. I want my cursor to be over here. So I can press W, and that will take me to the first character. Now there is a shortcut for this even. So you can directly press caret. Caret will take you to the first non-empty character. Okay, and similar to this, there is a $sign. $sign takes you to the end of the line. So caret takes you to the beginning of the line, and dollar takes you to the end. So basically 0W is same as caret. Okay. Yeah. Next, I'm gonna show you change command, and change command is like almost similar to delete command. So whatever I used in delete, the same thing I'm going to use over here. So if I say change word, then what it will do is it will delete the word and then put me in insert mode. Okay, so now I can write, let's say private. So instead of public, I changed it to private. Okay, so the difference between delete and change is that change will delete it and then put me in insert mode, but delete will keep me in normal mode only. So this is for changing a word. Okay, it was already private, whatever. So I can also say CC, that will change the whole line. Similar to DD will delete a whole line, CC will change the whole line. And similarly, capital C will change everything after this character, and we can, it puts me in insert mode, and then I can write anything I want. So U to undo it. Okay, any doubts up till now? Cool. So another thing I want to show you is that you can use numbers anywhere. So the reason I have set this relative numbering to relative numbering over here, you can see I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 from this distance from this line. Okay, so the reason is I can move easily. So if I want to go 9 lines down, I'll just press 9J. Oops, I was in visual mode. Yeah, so if I'm over here and I want to go 9 lines down, then I'll press 9J, and this will take me 9 lines down. Okay, I can go 8 lines up using 8K. So J to move down and K to move up. So you can use numbers anywhere. Okay, so you can also say I want to delete 2 lines, then I can say 2DB, that will delete 2 lines. So what I mean to say is that you can use numbers anywhere, almost anywhere. So that's kind of freedom Vim gives you. Now I'm gonna show you some cut, copy, paste commands. So let's say I want to move this board to over here, let's say. So I'll just say DB, and now it has deleted the line, but it's still in my register. Okay, and I can paste it. So if you want to do cut paste, then you essentially do DD and then paste it. So if I want to paste below this line, I can say P, and that will paste below this line. Okay, now I can also paste above this line. I've pressed U to undo. Now I can do I can also paste above this line using capital P. So capital P pastes above this line and small p pastes below this line. Now, of course, you won't remember all of these commands, but I have a link to some resources which I'll share with you. You can refer them. They have all the commands. So that's about cut and paste. You can also copy, and the word used for copy is yank, Y-A-N-K. So yank stands for copy. So yank means copy. So Y will copy your line, and now you can paste it anywhere. So you can paste it as many times you want. So this is like y command, and what you can do is I'll show you another mode. So if you type v, now you can see over here you are in visual mode, and now you can select text like you select in your IDs. You select something like this. Okay, same way you can select over here also. You can press, by the way, this is the symbol for escape in my key reader. So this is escape. Okay, yeah, uh, so you can go to visual mode by pressing V. So now you are in visual mode, and then you can select a bunch of text you want. Now there are different types of visual modes. For example, this was simple visual mode. You can also press capital V. So Shift V. Shift will select the whole line. Okay, again I'll show you. Shift V will select the whole line, and then you can select the block of text you want. And now after selecting this block of text, you can apply any command you want on this text. For example, if I want to copy this, I'll just press Y. It will copy this thing, and then I can paste as many times as I want. Okay, so so that essentially copies everything you selected, and you can also do many other things which I'll show you later on. Next, I'm going to show you replace command. So now let's say you want to change this P to, let's say, S. Then you will need to go to insert mode, and then you delete this character, and then you change this to S. Now instead of that, what you can do is you can just say R and then S. Now R will replace your current character and place S instead of it. So that's for replace. Okay guys, any doubt up till now? You can unmute yourself and ask. I mean, it's painful to look at chat again and again. You can unmute and ask. I'm fine with any doubts. Okay, so the next command is, okay, next I'm just gonna show you how you can navigate efficiently. So pressing J is one of the options. So pressing J and K is one of the option. You can move more efficiently. Let's say I want to go to the beginning of the file, then I can just press GG. So I pressed G 2 times. Let me show you. So press GG twice, and my cursor is on the first line. I can also press capital G, and that will take me to the end of the file. Cool. So GG to top, capital G to end, GG to top again. Now I can move to the, so if you see, this is my window, and I can move to the middle of this window by using capital M. So Shift M will take me to the middle line of this whole page, basically. So so M takes you to the middle of the page, and then you have L. L stands for lowest, so L takes you to the last line of the page, and similarly H takes you to the first line of the page. Cool. You can also navigate, you can move down, scroll down using Control D, and scroll up using Control U. Control D to scroll down, Control U to scroll up. There are a bunch of different ways. For example, if you want to skip through code blocks. For example, over here, I want to skip through this code block over here. I'm over here. Then I can just press curly brackets. So curly brackets will skip through entire bunch of code blocks. So this is a whole code block. And now I can skip through this code block by using curly braces, right? So you can see my cursor. Let's undo. So you can, so this is quite a cool way of navigating. You can move through code blocks. Okay, so that's covered. Now we can find a character in a line. For example, if I want to search for, let's say, if I want to move to the character just before this equals to, then I can just say 2 equals, and that will take me to the first to the character just before this equals to. So 2 equals takes me to the character before this, before the character I'm looking for. So you can say 2 equals, that will take me over here. I can also say f equals, f stands for find. So f equals will take me to the character itself. Okay, 2 takes me to the character before and f takes me to the character. So that's for finding out in a line. Okay, but if you want to find in entire document, then what you do is you press slash, and now you can see my cursor is over here, and now I can look for any word. So if I, let's say I have current and I want to display, I want to, okay, so I have current, and now I can see all the occurrences of current. So I'm over here, my cursor is over here, and then I can move to the next occurrence by pressing N. So I have highlighting enabled. I'll disable it. Yeah. So that's how you search. So for searching, you press slash and then search the word you are looking for. Okay. Yeah. Next I want to show you is, so let's say I'm over here, right? And I want to see where is my this curly bracket closing, and this is quite useful thing. Okay, we come across this many times. So I want to see where I have closed this bracket, right? So I can just press percentage, and that will take me to the closing bracket. So if I show you my cursor is now over here. So percentage will toggle between the curly braces. So let's say I'm over here, I go to the end of the file using dollar, right? I press dollar, dollar will take me to the end of the line. I don't know why I tell file editor. Yeah, so a dollar will take you to the end of the line, and then you can press percentage to toggle between the curly brace. And then let's say I want to go over here. You can navigate easily by basically. So percentage, again percentage will take me to this character, again percentage will bring me over here, and so on. So that's for navigating. So these are different ways you can navigate between the files in the file. Okay. Any doubts? Cool. Next, I'm gonna show you search and replace command. So for search and replace, you have percentage s, and then you say the word you are looking for. Let's say moves, and you replace with anything you want. So this first word is what you are looking for, and the second word is what you want to replace it with. So what I pressed is colon to bring me to command mode, and percentage s, that stands for substitute, and then you give 2 arguments. First is the word you want to find, and second is the word you want to replace it with. So you can see now moves are replaced with moves 1. I'll press undo, Q to undo. So that's about search and replace. Next is command mode. So I told you 2 or 3 times that if you press colon, you go into command mode, and you can do a bunch of different commands in the command mode. And the most cool thing I find over here is if you press bang, exclamation mark over here, then you can access all the commands of your terminal. So that's kind of cool. So if you just write ls and press enter, now it has executed the ls command of the terminal, and this is the result. Okay, so these are the files in my folder. So that's kind of cool. And what we can do over here is, so I showed you visual mode, right? So if you press V, you are in visual mode. I'll press Shift V to select the whole line. So Shift V is a visual line mode. And now I can select the text. And now I can press colon. And now this will do some command on the selected text. So this is just a symbol for this selection that I have made. And now I can give this whole selection as an input to some command. Now this command can be either a terminal command or a Vim command. Okay, so I told you that in order to access terminal commands, you write exclamation mark. So exclamation mark. Now you can now this will give an input that you have selected over here. This will be the input for the command that I'll write now. So for example, if I have a command called cowsay. So let me show you. So I have a command called cowsay. So it's just okay, I'll just say tldr cowsay. So how I use this, so this is basically a package, and you can install this using sudo apt install cowsay. Okay, and that will install it. And basically what cowsay does is cowsay takes the input of this, and then I press enter, and you can see this is the output it gives. So this is a cow, and the cow says something like this. Okay, and I want to do some cool stuff over here using that command. So I've selected this thing. Now I'm gonna pass this thing as an input to the command cowsay. So I'll just say cowsay, and that will take this thing and pass it as an input to this command. And now whatever is the output will be displayed in place of this text. So if I press this, you can see this command is executed. Okay, it's funny. So another thing I forgot to mention over here is that you have visual mode, right? You have visual line mode. You also have a visual block mode. So visual block mode, you can see over here. Visual. I'm now in. So in order to go to visual block mode, you just press Control V. So back to normal mode. Okay. Now I'll press Control V, and now I'm in visual block mode. Now I can select a text in this manner. Now visual block mode selects a block something like this. A rectangle type of selection. Okay, and where can we use this? Let's say I want to comment this whole line, selected lines, right? Then I can press. Now I'm in visual block mode, and I told you once you select something in visual mode, you can apply bunch of commands to that selection. So I'll just say shift insert. So that means capital I. Now remember I told you that capital I will move your cursor to the beginning of the line. So now my cursor is to the beginning of the line, and now I can comment this first line, and now I can go back to the normal mode. And now because I had selected this whole range, this same command was applied on this range. Okay, so that's how you can use it, and it's quite handy. So this is visual block mode. Okay. Now I know these are too many commands, and as I told you, I'll share with you resources, and you need to practice to get habituated with it. And once you start using it effectively, you will be super fast in doing many things. So next, I want to show you. Yeah, so one student was asking about my personal key bindings. So I'm going to home directory. So you can go to home directory. So I'm currently in terminal. You can press CD and this tilde symbol, and you can go to the home directory. Now Now in this home directory, you can create a file. By default, it won't be there. So you can create a file with Vim, and you can name it vimrc. Okay. Now this file will be your personal configuration file. Okay, and you can do some tweaks you want in this configuration file, and you can make your Vim more awesome. So this is my configuration file, and it's very large. And one thing I want to tell you is that most of the code I have not written it, right? I have copy pasted code from other developers. So there are codes from experienced developers on GitHub. You can search for dot files. So I've copy pasted some code of other developers, and I've customized it to my according to my requirements. So this is pretty advanced stuff. So I won't explain you everything, but I'm using currently package manager, plugin managers, and so this Wundle is actually a plugin manager which I use to install plugins. So these are the plugins I have installed currently, and these plugins. Some of the use cases of plugins you can already see. For example, if I press Control N, that stands for node tree, and this kind of opens a directory structure, so I can navigate between files. Okay. So this is a plugin, node tree. It's a very famous plugin. And then these are my custom configuration. So yeah, I was telling about my own key bindings. So for example, these are my key bindings that I have used. I have mapped some keys to perform some operations over here. So you can do this. Okay. You can search for map, and that will basically do it. So yeah, so I think I'll just show you. Yeah, so you can go to my GitHub, and over here I have in this dot file repository, you can see the list of my plugins and my vimrc file. Okay. Apart from that, okay, now we can. Okay, so there are any doubts? Oh, man, there should be some doubt. Are you all sleeping?
No, sir.
Yeah. Cool. So no doubts.
Sir, what are these plugins used for?
Yeah. So basically, your default Vim, it's quite boring. You cannot do much as you do with your IDEs. So, for example, I'll take the example of one plugin. It's called Nerd Tree. So what it does is it opens the whole directory structure in which my current file is residing. So I can move through the files using this. So this is just an example of plugin. Okay. So plugins actually do bunch of stuff to ease your programming experience. You can see, for example, I have some plugins related to Markdown. So I'll show you them. Let me go to this. Okay, I have this notes.md file, right? So I can just press. I have a plugin which helps me to execute these Markdown files. So if I press Control P, then you can see it opens this Markdown file. So it's so I'm just giving you examples of plugins. So what plugins do. So so did that clear your doubt?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Sahir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah. So you can explain the challenge part of yours, and then maybe I'll share mine.
There's one more question in the chat, Hardik.
Oh, How do you copy from website and paste to Vim? Yeah, so that's a good question. Sahil Shende, he's my classmate. Yeah, so let's say I want to copy this line. Now by default, this line is copied in a register, and your default copy paste register is plus. So so I can copy paste it over here. So I'll show you. Now this is in my plus register, right? So I have copied this line, and now if I want to paste it, I can access a register by pressing double quotes. Now double quotes and then the name of the register, and then the register name is P. The register name is plus. So and then P, that will paste it again. I'll show you again. So I have copied it, and now I'm pressing double quotes plus and P. That will paste from my plus register, and plus is your default copy paste register which you use. So so if you copy paste anything from your different IDs or different website, it will be stored in your plus register. If you are using Unix based system, at least. I'm not very sure about Windows, but does that clear your doubt, Sahil? Okay, how to add a custom theme on Vim? Yeah, I'll show you. Okay. Going to my Vimrc file. So I think I have implemented it. So there is something called I had something. Okay, wait. This is my default configuration. I have not set any theme. I've just implemented Powerline. So I'll show you how to do that. I don't remember it exactly. So set desert theme, for example, in Vim. Wait. Yeah. So you just need to write color scheme. So if you write just color scheme and the scheme you want, for example, desert, then it will change your scheme. So that's for changing different themes. Okay. Okay. Is there any plugin for multiple files viewing, or we have to execute them? Actually, you can do it in Vim itself. Okay, I'm gonna show you. So let me open my Java file, and if I want to open, so you are asking for opening multiple files, right, in Vim. Now there are a couple of different ways. Okay, for multiple file viewing, yeah. So basically, you can use :sp that will split your current page in two parts. So this is actually the same buffer, and this same buffer is divided into two parts, and you can use it to open multiple files as well. I'll show you. One specialty about this is if you write anything over here, it will be also displayed over here. So that's just one thing. Okay, I'll show you how to open multiple files. Now you can generally we tend to open it in a new file, so you can just press tab new. This tab new will open a new tab. Okay, and now I can even say I'm just quitting it, and I'm opening a current file. Let's say any file I have. So let's say I have a fruits.txt in my directory. I can open that in a new tab. Now I mentioned a plugin, right? Nerd3. So this basically opens a file menu over here, and now you can open however you want. For example, if I want to open this file, in a window, in the same window, then I can press I, and this will insert this file over here, right? I can also I can also open a file in a new tab by pressing P. So this is with the help of plugin I've done. So here's I have opened a new tab. So oops. So that's kind of thing. So you can use plugins for it, but by default also in default Vim you can do many of the things you want. So using tab edit is one command. For example, prepend.txt, and then you press GP to move to the next tab. You can press G capital T to move backwards and GP to move forward. So that's kind of how you move throughout the files. So is it clear?
Okay, so Hardik, what we'll do is we'll just reveal what the surprise is, and then we'll take all the questions in the Q&A sections. So guys, if you have any questions related to Vim or anything in general, you can just start posting them in the chat, or you can ask them by unmuting yourself later on. So
you can DM us also.
Yeah. So I'll just let you know about the challenge. Hardik, yeah, thanks. So I'll share my screen. So what the challenge is that we have made a couple of questions, sort of couple of problems that we have made. So whatever we explained you today related to command line and Vim. So what you are supposed to do is there are some certain problems which you have to try to solve them. So this is the repository for the challenge. I'll send the link in the chat box. So essentially the problems are divided into CLI and Vim parts, and what you need to do is try to solve through each problem and execute a certain number of tasks that have been given. So I'll show you how you can set up this whole challenge. So first thing is that what you need to clone this repository to your local machine. So I'll do that. Also, just let me know if you all can access this the repository. I've made it public, but just confirm with me.
Yeah, anyone of you please reply. Can you access this thing? Okay, cool. They can access.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I've cloned it. I've used git clone. Then I hope you can you know how to clone things. But anyways, I'll just explain. So just type git clone and paste the URL which you would get here in the repository. You can copy it from here. Other ways to directly download zip, but I'll just it's better that you clone it using the git command. So open this in Sublime. Yeah. So we have so the whole repository has two main directories. There's a CLI and there's a Vim directory. So in the README file, we have explained all the rules and things that we have. I just go over them. So what you need to do is you need to make a sort of PDF file explaining the way you solved each solutions that each problem that you are presented with. And after that you need to just WhatsApp us the PDFs. So you have today's day, tomorrow's day, and we'll take the submissions till Monday 7th, till 12. Yeah, so anyone can solve this, but so we are having a certain leaderboard. So that for you to be counted in the leaderboard, you need to be from second year, SVNIT or triple IT Surat. what else? So you can just go through these guidelines. I'm just explaining the main points. So yeah, so see the whole challenge is of 100 points. There's a CLI section and there's a Vim section. So each section has a number of questions. What task you're supposed to perform are given in the README file that's there. So there are 9 questions in CLI, and there are 3 questions in Vim plus 2 bonus questions for Vim. At the same time, what we have given here are some links for some resources. The first 4 are for Vim. The last one is, so before I explained to you guys that the whole shell and bash thing is like a programming language. So a few months back, I wrote a sort of tutorial, a crash course kind of in this programming language. So you can, if you want to learn shell scripting, if you've heard of that, so you can go through that whole thing. Also, there's one more PDF file present in this whole repository. So that's essentially it's like the Bible for Linux. Once you clone it, you will get that whole book that's there. So yeah.
Yeah,
What
guys. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, complete.
So what I'll do is I'll just explain I'll solve the first problem for you. So that I hope that clears things out. Also, I think it's fairly obvious that you need to solve these challenges using the command line and Vim only. So, okay, so the first problem under the CLI section asks me to copy all the files from CLI/Q1/form from to the to directory. So first thing I'll do is I'll cd into the CLI section and I'll go to the first question that's there. So if I ls, you can see I have this one directory called from. If I ls into that, you can see there are lots of directories and files inside. So what my first challenge is that I need to copy all these files that are there into a directory called to. Now there's no to directory, so I'll just make one. And next thing that I would have to do is just copy everything that's there to and do it recursively. If I ls into 2, I have all the files that have been copied. So I'll just show you here so that makes it a bit more clear. So these were the files and folders that were in form, and I copied them to 2. So yeah, that's essentially how you're supposed to solve each of the problems. For the CLI section, the problems get harder as you go down. Now, how would you document this? So what we need is we just need to the information that you knew these commands. So in your PDF, what you could mention is that use mkdir2 to make a new directory, and you use this command with these arguments to copy the files. And maybe you could include a screenshot or something of the output. So for in this case, the output would be that yes, I've copied all the files and here's the list of the data that has been copied. So maybe I'll just take the screenshot and then I'll attach it to my PDF. So essentially what we want is for every question, we need what command you used and some sort of screenshot or something that shows that yes, it was executed correctly for you. So yeah, that's how we are gonna judge for the challenge. And so we have, every question has certain points according to the difficulty level, and by Monday we would release a leaderboard. And as I mentioned before, what we do is the top people in the leaderboard will get accepted in the, so this is the ACM SVNIT organization that we have created. So they would be a part of this, and at the same time, if you go to their profile, so you would get the badge under the organization section. So yeah, that's the perks that we have for you guys. So, yeah. Hardik, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen again. Okay, so in the Vim part, okay, I need to open that thing. Yeah, so in the Vim part, I have basically 3 questions and 2 bonus question, and yeah, we don't expect you to solve every question, right? Some questions are really tough, we haven't covered them, and you need to, I mean, search on Google or whatever you want to learn how to do this thing. And I have also mentioned resources over here. So if you are not very confident with Vim, I strongly recommend you to first do the Vim tutor part. So Vim tutor, so I'll show you how to do. So in Vim, I'll press QA. So basically, if you press QA, that will quit all without saving changes. And now if I just press Vim tutor in my terminal, and it will open a tutorial which will teach me Vim. Okay, so this is a basic tutorial which you all should complete. Okay, so if you are not very confident, then go over through it. And I strongly recommend this missing semester Vim tutorial also. It's awesome. And then there is a game called Vim Golf. So this Vim Golf is a game where you are given an input file and an output file, and you have to convert this input file into output file in minimum keystrokes. Okay, so that's kind of exciting game, and one of the challenges is taken from there. So so that's about Vim Golf. And one more thing about this challenge is that in Vim you have to write what keystrokes you used, and minimum keystrokes will get maximum points. Okay, so that's about it. And Vim Adventures is also a very cool game, but sadly it's not free. It's free up till only level 3. So I won't play this currently, but it's a game kind of thing to learn Vim. So that's it, I think. Yeah, now we can take FAQ.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Hardik, there was this question asked by Saksham, which we did cover. So he asked, can we add any theme other than the options available in color scheme for them?
Okay. I would have to see. I'm not very sure. Okay, I'll reply to you later on, because I only know of color scheme and then setting a theme. And there are, I mean, many options available. There are many themes in color scheme. I just remember desert, so I set it to desert. So that's the thing. By the way, you can even set your terminal theme, and that will be reflected in your Vim also. So if you change the theme of your terminal, then it will be reflected in your Vim. Okay, so you can do either of them. So that's another option. Okay, so you can DM me, and I'll search for any other option to add theme if I get. Okay, Saksham Ji. Yeah, so next question is how to set tab stop equals to 4. So you just you can write it in your config vimrc file that set tab stop equals to 4. I have set it, I guess. Yeah. So I'll show you. So yeah, so this is my so this is how you write it: set tab stop equals to 2, and that will by default set your tab stop to 2. And by the way, you can also write it in this way. If you just want to, if you don't want to change it for all the files, for example, so this vimrc will change it for all the vim files. Okay, this will change the configuration of all the vim files. If you want to change only for your current file, then you can just press colon set and tab stop equals to 4. You can write something like this. Okay, that should not be space. Set tab stop equals to 4. Right. So if I go, so this is by default 4 tab stop. Where can I find my vim as well? Yeah, so by default there is no vimrc file. So what you can do, Saksham, is you can create a new .vimrc file. So you just need to create a new file named .vimrc, and then you can write your change what you want. So if you want to change permanently, you change it in your .vimrc file, and Vim will automatically trace it.
Yeah, so you need to create it in the home directory of your
Yeah,
user.
in home directory. Okay, any more doubts? Does using WSL in Windows give same functionality as Linux? See, WSL was meant to provide the terminal of Linux on Windows. Okay, now I have not used it much, so I cannot tell it, but I used Vim and all my configurations were working in WSL of Unix systems, all were working on WSL. So there should not be much issue.
So the answer to this actually depends on what you mean by the functionality.
Yeah, that it's very specific. You
So,
can,
but
yeah.
so
Go
what
ahead.
for if you want for this specific challenge, the whole specific challenge can be implemented. You can solve it using WSL. Also, what WSL is, it's I mentioned something called POSIX at the start of the workshop. WSL essentially is an implementation of POSIX. So most of the commands that work for Linux and Mac would work there as well. Also, I think you get the same directory structure as well. So most of the things should work fine there.
Okay. Yeah. How do you add number permanently in Vim? So what do you mean by add number? Do you mean lines of the file that I showed you? Yeah. So relative lines can be set using set relative lines. So set relative number. This is the command. You can write this in your vimrc file. This should work. I think there is a shortcut also. You can press RN or something, but I don't remember it. You can always do help and relative number. That will open the manual page. So this will set it. Okay. And if you just want number, then you can just say set number and that will display number, but it won't display relative number as I showed you.